Hi everybody, welcome to the inaugural Polaris Virtual Leadership Series, where we'll be bringing conversations to you throughout the course of November, each and every weekend, with some of the world's leaders in neurodiversity, rights, and inclusion on the employment front, both locally and worldwide. These are people changing the face of how adults with autism and other neurodiverse adults are being recruited by employers. And it's important to note, these series of chats are not about integration, they're not about acceptance, they're about companies and leaders and corporate leaders, some of the biggest leaders in the world, acknowledging why companies that don't pay attention to neurodiverse candidates will be left behind. It's not about integration, it's about innovation. So when we talk about worldwide leaders doing groundbreaking work in advocating for neurodivergent people and those on the spectrum, José Velasco most definitely fits the bill. He is the Vice President of Product Development for worldwide software giant SAP. He's also the ambassador for Autism at Work, a global SAP program, and the father of two sons who are on the autism spectrum. Autism at Work has placed more than 160 employees in a variety of positions across 13 countries and in 28 locations. We spoke to José Velasco earlier this week via Zoom. Here's the conversation. Someone of your status in the business world, a man of ambition, a man with big ideas. I'm curious, as a parent, how did you begin to sort of navigate that thought process about what your children would be growing up to do, what your children would be able to do in the world?
I think that the center or at the center of the answer would be something very simple, and that is my ambition for my children would be for them to be happy. And I think that for us to achieve happiness for them, we really try to look into high-level blocks. One would be to be included in all aspects of life. The second one would be their ability to reach self-determination to the extent possible. A happy future would also include the dignity of work.
A lot of work has been done in that respect too, to support children with autism, a little less so for adults entering the workforce. What are the major barriers now from your valuable perspective for adults trying to enter the workforce?
I'm gonna probably just relate it back to our own personal experience. My son is somebody has skills, valuable skills for the workplace. And I have been that parent that takes him into an interview, and I'm waiting and there in the parking lot, wishing that I could jump into the interview and tell them how great he would be at this or that if he only had that opportunity. And in the end, it is a question of not being understood in their capabilities. And I think that that's probably the single biggest barrier that people in the spectrum have, is being understood for what they can do and not focusing on what they cannot do. It seems like the current processes fall today focus tremendously on an outdated interview process. And I don't think it's outdated just for folks in the spectrum, it's for everybody. We have made great discoveries by providing different ways of trying to understand what people are capable of that do not center on the traditional interview process.
That interview bias, not being able to get them even in the front door. What is it specifically, just if we could just expand on that a little bit, specifically about the interview process that is so adverse to being compatible to neurodiverse individuals?
Many folks, we have a protocol for these things, and we tend to measure people using a bias that is known, okay? The bias includes things like being able to establish eye contact, having a firm handshake, not fidgeting with your fingers, being dressed appropriately, sitting in a correct posture. There's all of these things that are part of a protocol in order to get into a company, getting into the workplace. But the reality is that there's going to be jobs out there for which looking at somebody in the eye may not be a necessity. Maybe, as it is the case with different cultures, a hard handshake is not something that somebody can do. In many cases, somebody who's neurodiverse, somebody on the autism spectrum, does not know how much pressure to exert in a handshake because of sensory reasons. But if we use those things as protocols to bring people in the workplace, we're going to miss on a tremendous amount of talent out there. We have to change our perspective on how we analyze talent, how do we understand capabilities.
What is autism at work?
Autism at work is simply a different path to success. Okay, the way that we look at it is we have individuals that need a different way to come into enterprises and be supported through their life as employees in the company. And we launched this program in 2013 with the objective of precisely tapping into a heavily underutilized source of talent. Paul, we talk to universities, and sometimes we talk to one university that tells us we have 150 self-identified individuals on the spectrum, 200, 300. One university told us they had 600 people that they knew were on the autism spectrum. Those are 5 universities. We already have 1,000 people right there. With an 85% unemployment rate, there is definitely a need from the community for those jobs. But for companies like ours, okay, it is extremely important as well to bridge those gaps that we have in trying to bring this talent into the workplace. There's a humongous wave of talent coming at us. The kids that went through the individualized education plans, that grew up with supports that now are graduating from college, their expectation is that they want to have a job in enterprises like SAP. And what we're doing through the Autism at Work program is precisely creating that bridge.
Why is it a necessity for companies to tap into this untapped talent?
I think that we're getting into the area of benefits, right? And how are these programs benefiting from individuals who are neurodiverse? There's 2 key areas I think that we need to consider. One is going to be the human benefit. The other one is the business benefit. And some of these things will not be understood for another 10 or 15 years, to be frank. I think that we are learning along the way and we're experiencing these things. If we look at it from a human perspective, Paul, the perspective that our colleagues on the autism spectrum bring is a very strong one. Alan Kay, famous computer scientist, once said that a different perspective is worth 80 IQ points. And I believe that those perspectives are very, very enriching from a human perspective, as well as from, let's say, a product perspective as well. Let me go through a couple of examples. I have a good friend of mine who is autistic and who is one of our employees on the autism spectrum. At some point in his life before he came to work for SAP, he was homeless. And right now, almost 4 years after that, he's one of our most valued engineers. He's what we call a catalyst, which is a very high level of performance that we have for an employee. And in having a conversation with him, Paul, I realized how bad I was at really appreciating the job that I have and the fact that I have a job. When you have, it's my first experience in corporate life when I had the opportunity to have one of my colleagues in the company tell me about his experience with being homeless. I don't know how many people have had that, but it completely changed my perspective on things.
This is not exactly the type of candidate that most people would associate with imagining what companies would be looking for when they're looking for neurodiverse, autistic individuals. You know, they probably figure, you know, some numbers prodigy, PhD, and these are the only candidates that could really rise above their disability. Is how most people see it. But is it true that every division at SAP is represented by at least one neurodivergent individual right now?
Absolutely, yes. The program grew from a very contained set of roles that we had. We started the program with the original announcement that we would hire people on the autism spectrum in software testing and data quality functions. Okay, but Paul, then we received dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes of individuals that were business process experts or graphic designers or people that have a history degree that would be a good map for functions like human resources. And very quickly we said, well, it doesn't make any sense to say we're going to hire people on the autism spectrum for this or that function. It would be the equivalent of going back in time, maybe 100 years, when we would say, if you belong to this particular nationality or ethnic group, you do this type of job, or if you're this gender, you do this type of job. So we open up completely. And We've had to, today we have about 29 different types of jobs. Again, these are not jobs for people on the autism spectrum. They're just for people who happen to be autistic, who satisfy a business need in the company.
You said something else fairly interesting. You said obviously this is a tremendous program, but you've said that the greatest hope that you have for this program is that it's obsolete in 5 years. What do you mean by that?
I think that programs are meant to be transformation agents for companies. Programs are not necessarily designed to be permanent fixtures. What we are trying to achieve through this program is to change what we call the run, maintain processes of the company, such that these things that we have been able to realize through the program practices, which are contained again in a fairly concentrated practice of individuals, that as it is transferred over to the run, maintain organizations, we are really able to change the DNA of the company and the perspective in a way that we probably would have a small Autism at Work program office, right? But the idea again would be that the processes and the practices are so embedded in day-to-day operations that it would be completely transparent for the company. In talent, lack of talent can only happen if your blinders are set this way. If you open a little bit your perspective and start looking a little bit beyond just looking straight, you're going to find great talent on the edges, regardless of what industry you're in.
That's a tremendous advice to employers out there, to business owners. Last question, what's your message to neurodivergent people, people with autism out there who might be employable, but who aren't confident that their talents will be recognized and perhaps are on the verge of giving up?
I say hang in there, okay? I think the future is changing. We have something that we established called the Roundtable. There's also the SAP Autism at Work or the SAP Autism Inclusion Pledge. Both are mechanisms by which collaboration between different companies takes place to exchange stories. I mean, we work with companies like Microsoft, Ernst & Young, JP Morgan Chase, and many others out there. We have a regular meeting. We exchange ideas and practices because we believe in neurodiversity in the workplace. So my message to those that are neurodiverse looking for a job is things are changing. There's more and more companies that are opening their doors, setting up programs as we speak. The second one is, in these times of COVID, use your time wisely. There's a fantastic opportunity right now to self-educate yourself, to take some courses online. Don't lose hope. This whole thing is going to pass, and there will be an opportunity to re-engage again. Okay, many companies are out there hiring people right now as we speak as well. And lastly, what I would tell somebody who's neurodiverse is look for supports. There's many entities, there's nonprofit organizations out there, there's organizations that are interested in your success. You don't have to go it alone. And there's more people out there that are willing to help than sometimes we know of. Go out and check out in your community, reach out to people and get those supports that you need. Because again, as I started saying at the very beginning, this is something that we cannot all do alone. Like you said, Paul, it takes a village.
All right. José Velasco, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
I really appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.